How great would it be to get up close and personal with the beauty industry heroes we love and admire, and to ask them, how did you learn to do what you do? I'm Chris Baran, a hairstylist and educator for 40 plus years, and I'm inviting all our heroes to chat and share the secrets of their success. Welcome to Headcases, and I must say today is a great day because I have a friend, a comrade in arms that's on, and without giving away who it is yet, he is a global brand ambassador for Redken, if you haven't figured that out so far. He is an Ulta Beauty Pro team member. He is multiple NAHA winner and nominee. He is an editorial stylist. He's worked on manufacturers' trend campaigns before. He's a celebrity stylist. His audiences range from anywhere from in-salon classes to a main stage of over 10,000 people. If I had to put three words down to describe this individual, it would be talented, tasteful, and a transformer. And he is a fellow Canuck. And that's, by the way, that's AKA Canadian for our non-Canadian friends that out there. So let's get into this week's head case, Mr. Sean Godard. Sean, my friend, it is an absolute honor to have you here on Head Cases. How you doing?
I'm doing good. It's so good to be here. I know we've been working on this for a minute and trying to connect. And like I was saying, I feel like I haven't seen you
I
forever.
know it's been the eternal. I find this always a thing. How do you get everybody fitted in? And I know that with the scheduling that you have, and how sought after you are, I just want to thank you because I know it takes a lot of time out of your life. But listen, and I did mention that in our intro that we're both knuckleheads, and so from one Canuck to
Yes.
the other, I just want to say, Jesus Murphy, it's great to have you on Head Cases. Hey, you hoser.
It's great to be here, eh?
So hey, let's give her, eh? Beauty.
Oh, giver. That's a
Yeah,
good
that's right.
Canadian one.
And we got all the Timmies and most people, when I tell them about toques and mucklucks, they have no idea what I'm talking about. So for those listening and watching, a toque is literally a wool hat that you wear all the time, and mucklucks are just
Beanie, I think
sort of like
they call it here. Yeah.
leather moccasins that have big, leggings on them, etc. So just what have you ever had when I know that happened to me when I went from being a Canadian artist to a US artist? There was generally some confusion that always happened when I was speaking Canadian. Does that ever happen to you?
It does. It comes out every now and then. Well, one just yesterday, actually, a British person, we all know
No,
Kelly
yeah.
Scott, called me out on my request for oat milk, but I said oat milk. She was like, "You really gave it that
Yeah.
Canadian mouth of the oot, the oot." So that was just yesterday. But then in the hair world, there's a lot of terms that are kind of different, like processing versus
Processing. Yeah.
processing. That was one that I really had to train myself on the American way because you'd say now I confuse which is which, but
Yeah.
processing, and you say that here, and they're like, "What's that mean?" I'm like, "Well, put it two and two together. It's close.
Yeah.
Processing." And then, of course, the universal one in my world is color with an O versus
Yeah,
color with a
exactly.
U. So
I remember the first time that I think it was back in, I'll say in the 80s and whatever. So I'll try to figure out what that was later. But I remember going to, I think I was somewhere down south. I don't know whether it was Alabama or where I was, but they were talking about the weekend and what happened on the weekend before. And I said, wait, I was out, just with some friends, and I said, I was so pissed. And they said, well, um, why were you angry? I went, well, I wasn't angry. And they said, well, you said you were
I
pissed.
was
I said, I
drunk.
was. And he said, well, you said you weren't angry. And I said, I know, I was pissed. I said, so it turns out, just for those of you listening, I don't want to go the long roundabout and make it like an Abbott Costello routine. But if you don't know, pissed here generally means you're upset. Pissed in Canada means you're drunk. So,
Yeah,
and I think there has been
true. A
time
little
when you and I
tipsy.
have been pissed together. So, I just again,
Absolutely.
usually what happens, and I always on head cases, I always want people to know your story first. So give us a little
Yeah.
your story. I mean, I know a lot of your story, but what first of all, why hair? How'd you get into it? Was there ever anything else before, etc.?
Okay, great. So, yeah, why hair? Well, how I got into it was I was actually, when I was younger, really into doing art and drawing, sketching, painting, all of those things. Art was like my number one subject in school, one of the only ones that I got 100 in, to be honest. Then there was a drastic decline when it came to the other math and science and all that. So it really showed where my mind was living. And then I had the reality that when you start to realize that artists, in that sense, oftentimes don't make any money until after they're dead. And I was like, well, listen, I've got expensive taste. I got to figure out how to make some money now. And so that's, and, kind of on the side, I was always interested in hair because, of course, it's creative. And, when you're younger and in high school, you don't always have the money to go to the salon. So you're playing around doing your own hair, kitchen
Right.
hair, if you will. And I was always pretty good at it. And so there would be times where I would go with a girlfriend to a salon and watch how the stylist would do her hair or do the foiling or even perming at that time. And, sometimes we wouldn't be happy with the result. And what we would do is literally leave the salon, go to the drugstore next door, buy another bleach kit and another color kit to be able to continue doing the process. So I realized that I was like, I'm kind of okay at this. But if I'm being real with you, Chris, at the time, and unfortunately, still to this day, some people don't
Yeah.
look at hairdressing as being a career.
Yeah.
And so in my mind, perhaps it was part of my upbringing or being in a smaller community, being a hairstylist was really just like kind of like a mom in the garage sort of situation, like a little side hustle job. And I never really viewed it as a career. So one day, one of my good friends went to started hair school. And he was like, I think you'd really like this. You should consider doing it. And so I took the risk because I honestly didn't really have much else lined up for me in terms of what I wanted to do career wise. And honestly, I have not looked back
Yeah.
once yet.
Yeah. And I think that, I know you and I know, I don't have an eye on your tax returns, but I know you don't want me to, and I don't want to, but the reality is I know that it's up there. And that's one, I think you touched on it. And that's a real bee in my bonnet that I have. And I don't know if that's a Canadianism or it's across the board. Um, but it really bothers me, because I think every industry has that where you have people that don't want to put any energy into it and don't make any money, and you have people that put the energy in, apply themselves, are okay with making mistakes, and they make a lot of money. And I'm
Yeah.
saying that because, and I'd love to hear your take on that about what you when you talk to people about it, because here's the reality for those people listening and watching right now, and if you're just getting into the industry, or let's say somebody is enticing you to go into it, and your parents are doing what some parents do, just say, "Well, you're not going to ever make any money in the hairdressing industry," and I want you to relate to that. Tell me what you see. I mean, they might look at you and you say, "Yeah, well, you two guys are on this level, but that's not the level everybody else has." But you deal with people all the time who are in the salon,
Yeah.
and it's not necessarily in the trenches. I'd say in the limelight, and talk about what their earnings are like, et cetera. What do you see when you go out on the industry?
So, I see exactly what you said. There's kind of two situations that you can put yourself in, and you can be the stylist that's always trying to do more, or you can be the stylist that's compliant in what's being given to you. But I think the biggest thing that I would say on this, and it's a hard subject I'll use
Yeah.
today's world to age myself a little bit here, but in today's world, everyone expects to be getting paid and seeing the financial value in their bank account right away. And the one thing I will share from my experience was along the way, sometimes opportunities aren't always paid, but the opportunities were proven to be invaluable in my career. And some examples of that, Chris, are really like, a classic one, mentoring and shadowing under people. I was with you for years at the very beginning when we opened
Yeah.
the Redken
Yeah.
Exchange in
Mhm.
Canada. And so that's on the education side. But then on a salon side, taking advantage of doing models or bringing in clients to try and change your books. People always ask, how can I get more creative clients or get them to do something different? And for me, a big way that I did that was by doing a model that perhaps she wasn't paying for her service, but I'm able to get an image of it to put out there on social media. And we all know today's world,
It's
social
big.
media is like the
Yeah.
business card that we used
Yeah.
to have, right? So, sometimes it's about investing into yourself, and it's not always a direct financial return that you see, but you do end up getting it back. Now, with saying that, Chris, some stylists out there these days, the money is in the biz more than it's ever been behind the chair. I feel like there's certain salons I go to and certain stylists that I work with that the income that they're bringing in behind the chair just blows my mind that they're able to do it. But it's from working hard and being dedicated while you're in there and not being
Yeah.
passive.
Yeah, you hit on so many points there that are near and dear to my heart. Um, and I want for again, and I'm not trying to do this all as evidence to people. Well, yes, I am. What am I saying? Who am I trying to kid? I
You
want the
want the
proof. The
proof.
proof's in the pudding. Is that another Canadianism? I don't know. But I did a podcast a short bit back with Tom Kuhn, who, if you and when you looked at the numbers, he sent me all the numbers that they did, and they did a huge analysis of our industry, and they said if you take a look at see in our industry, here's what I love. You have if you're a wage earner, you're going to get at that
Mhm,
wage, and that's why I understand if you're a wage earner and that's what you want, great. But here's what's great about our industry is we have the opportunity if you want to put in 1 or 2 more hours, if you want to take another booking, you can set the wages that you want. And if you want to say, look, I can get a job, and I've heard so many people, listen, why would I want to start in the hairdressing industry when I'm only going to make minimum wage for maybe a year? Well, yeah, okay, that might happen if you don't apply yourself. But let's just say that happens. Let's just say that there's
mhm.
an hour. Let's say it takes you a year before you getting a good lift and making 30, 40, 50, $60,000 a year. But if you're working at McDonald's and you're still going to be making that same 15 or $20 an hour for the rest of your life. So, like you said, there's this
Yeah.
opportunity that you have. And you just have to, if you want to push more, take another client, get more education, increase the value of your work. All of a sudden, you can be 100, 100K earner. The
And plus,
um,
yeah.
Tom Kuhn, when they did that analysis, because nowadays you can choose your own hours. So if you only want to work 2 to 3 days
Mhm,
a week, you can work 2 to 3 days a week. There's people that are out there that work, and I believe this, and I know it, Lee, if you're in the background, I don't know if you can send me a note or whatever, but I know that we talked to one person that was on, and he has a person with him that they just started out in the business. I've been thinking with them for about a year or 2 years. They're working, I think it was 24 hours, either 18 or 24 hours a week, pulling in 100 grand. Yeah, that was with Daniel
wow.
Mason Jones, and he's got the number there, 27 hours a week. And he was saying, and
Wow.
100 grand a year, and they think that you can't make money in this industry.
Chris, I have a really real story that I'd love to share speaking about incomes like that for stylists. I'm partnered with
Yeah.
Ulta Beauty, so we have a lot of stylists under us. And last year, we celebrated our first stylist that clocked in at $350,000 behind the chair.
Say that again.
Three
I think you're just
$350,000 in a
hold it,
year.
hold it.
And this
I can't.
year,
That is three hundred and
yeah,
fifty thousand dollars. Now, let me ask you a question, because the first thing everybody's going to say is,
yes.
"Was that what they brought
What is
in, or that's what they earned?"
So that was what she brought in, but here's the deal: at in this pay structure, what the higher you bring in, the more commission you make. So she was clocking in 70%
Oh,
commission on the 350,000.
wow, wow,
Yeah, it's like, and then also we have 20 this year in the entire company that are clocking in
that's
200,000.
amazing.
So and that's in a more corporate salon structure, but that's proof that sometimes the corporate side can work for you because you get that push of like education
Yeah,
and all of those things that we were talking about. But yeah, the numbers out there are really high.
yeah, and that's it's interesting because I was talking to Gordon Miller, and if any of you had not listened to anything that Gordon Miller has to say, because he's got his spot on with the industry and the pulse on it. And he was saying that really where a lot of the education is coming from right now is in the corporate from corporate accounts. So
Yeah.
Congratulations. So I want to just take a quick step back because boy, we got into the meat heavy there. But I want to,
We ran right
yeah,
into it.
I want to go back to your origin. Like where I want to go back to like
Yes.
um, what your roots were. You said that you got into the hairdressing industry, and I want to know about first of all, like what did your family say? What did your family say when you said you were going into it? Because that's what we started all this.
So yeah, no, they were actually really supportive about the idea. My grandmother was like my mother, so she loved the concept. I think she wanted to just get her hair done for free, to be honest. But she was all for it because she knew that I was always creative. And, at that time in my career, where I did grow up for most of my, high school years was Halifax, Nova Scotia. So, that is a smaller town, if you will, especially in Canada on the East Coast. And so, there wasn't really a lot of like what we would look at as being like super high end salons or that New York City salon vibe. We had a few standout ones that were cool. But it wasn't the same vibe. So to rewind a bit off of that, I went to school at the Hair Design Center, which was owned by Glenn Baker
Yeah.
and Peter Mahoney, all Redken school. And so really, I started out basically working with Redken products. And right after I finished school, I graduated and went to the nice bougie salon that was downtown Halifax. And that was actually a different brand. So that was an
Uh,
Aveda salon. So my first experience in the world was going from Redken into the world of Aveda, which we know they're very different. But my point in this story is that in my first 8 months of coming out of school, because of the drive that I had and the support that I got from that salon in terms of continuing education, I already had a fully booked clientele. And like you're saying, it that really did a lot for my confidence as a new stylist to be able to get fully booked that fast. And if I pause there on that story, the one thing when I think about why that happened to me is simply because I was different than
right.
everybody else that was there. And we always talk about your personal brand and what you're offering. It's not just the way you look or the way you dress, it's your
Right.
vibe, your energy, and how you do your services. So at the time, and you'll probably remember this type of technique, Chris. I, had all these DVDs of hairdressing things from different brands, and there was this haircut that I'm sure you've done once upon a time, or definitely seen. I think it was like a Rusk thing was doing at the time, where they would do ponytails on the head and cut them with
Yeah.
texture
I
scissors. Do you remember
absolutely
those?
guilty.
So guilty, yes. So at the time, that like shattered, shaggy, rocked out hair was really what people were asking for. And the fact that I was able to do these ponytail things in the salon and really literally hack these people's
Yeah.
hair off and make it all shattered and crazy. One, they loved it. Two, it was quick, it was dramatic looking, and it really started to get this referral thing of this guy that does this crazy haircut. And meanwhile, I actually had no idea what the principle was. I get it now because you've taught me. But I was just like, it works, so let's do it. And so yeah, back to the story. That was what got me there and got me noticed for being different. And then I was like, you know what? I have this itch to go to the big city, which in Canada we know it's either Toronto or
Yeah.
Montreal, and my French isn't that good, so Toronto it was. And I took the leap with really just like 1 month's rent in my bank account, and went to the big city and started out there. And wow, that was an eye opener because suddenly I was no longer the big fish in the small pond, if you will. I was the small fish in a very, very big pond. So I think sometimes people think, oh, you live in a big city, you have it easy. It's actually the opposite. The bigger the city, the harder it
Exactly.
is, I think.
And especially Toronto. I mean, out of Canada, let's see that
Yeah.
I'd say, I'm not gonna be, it won't be fair if I said the major people that came out of that. But obviously you had number one mass, you had people had to survive there. And it's Toronto is like New York. If you don't do good work and it's not and it's not a value oriented, then you're gonna fail. And and I think
Yeah.
there's a lot of amazing hairdressers that came out of that Toronto. So I can certainly understand how and why you chose that. So now out of that, now I want to go from there and jump into you moved there. Um,
Yeah.
how did you get your start? Because that's the hardest part, I think, for everybody to understand is when people go, why education? Why would you want to possibly risk? I heard in another interview a while back, and somebody said, that public speaking is the number one fear. And actually, number one
Yeah.
is not the number one fear. Uh, People put it at that one. The number one fear is actually public humiliation. And public speaking sets you up for that in the nth degree. So why on earth would you all of a sudden go, hey, I'm going to go risk being publicly humiliated by doing being on stage? What was the catalyst for you in that?
Honestly, that's a great question and a good story for you here on this one. So, I'll backtrack to when I got into the hair world for a second. Obviously, when you're joining it, you don't necessarily know that this world
Right.
exists that we're involved in now. You think it's all about the salon and, maybe doing a photo shoot, but the whole concept of a stage show and a hair show, I had no idea of. And actually, when I was at my school, I won a contest for like best updo styling, which was funny because in the beginning of my career, that was not my strength. And the trip was to go to the ABA beauty show, which I'm sure you remember. Well, you're going to remember because you were at
Allied
this
Beauty
one, and
Association. Yep.
it was a chance to yes, and it was a chance to have a look and learn class, and you and Sam were doing it for one of the trend collections
Yep.
at the time. And I remember it so vividly to this day, Chris, when they opened those doors and I walked in and there was this huge stage set up with all the lights and we're all seated at these tables. And I remember thinking, wow, I'd like this one feels like a concert moment experience. There's pretty models everywhere, the hair is getting cut. And but two, I was like, I could never do that. I was very shy, very quiet, and not the person that I am now. So fast forward to moving to the big city, I was working in a Redken salon at the time, and one of the sales reps came in and they were looking for new Redken artists. And she said, I think you'd be really good at this. And we'd love to get you in on the training for it. And I looked at her and I said, you mean where they get up there on the stage and speak and swing the scissors around? I was like, I don't think I could. That's not me. Like, I'm more of a behind the scenes kind of person. And she goes, no, no. She's like, we'll bring you through the trainings. We'll show you, we'll teach you all that stuff, how to be a public speaker. Just show up. And so, I did. I took the risk with that and went on the first training. And I realized actually fairly quickly within the training that I was grasping it a little bit better than some of the other people that were in that first group. And so I kept going back. It was like maybe once a month, once every few months. And that's really where I started to take off. I realized I think it was two-sided. One, it was so amazing to me that such a big company like L'Oreal and Redken would be interested in a kid like me. I was maybe 22 at the time. It felt good to feel like someone was interested
Hmm.
in investing in me, if you will. And then what I loved about it, to be honest, at the time was the fact that they're like, you get cheaper or free education. And I was like, wow, I'm brand new. I barely make any money. I have barely any money in my pockets. But you mean I'm going to get to hang out with these industry leaders like you and get to learn and for free? I was like, okay, I'll do
Yeah.
that. So that's kind of where the journey all began. And actually, shortly after that is when I met you for the
Yeah.
first time.
And I want to jump back for a second because what you hit on a really, really interesting point. We've all seen people that are in our industry and they're very creative, and I commend them. But I
Yes.
think to be on to educate, and again, I don't want to take this away and make it all about the platform as we call it. The big artists on stage. Everybody to some degree is educating. Whether you're in the salon just
Yes.
talking to an associate, an apprentice, or whatever. Whether you're just talking to another hairdresser after a class or a show, everybody has that ability to educate. And the beautiful thing, and this I'm not going to go down a tangent here, but I think creativity gets a bad bounce. And
Yes.
unfortunately, I'm just going to say this out loud. Our education system in our schools beats the creativity out of you. If you talk to many people, they'll say that um, everybody's creative. All kids are creative,
Yep.
but school system and the way that we're set up takes it out. Don't get me clear. I'm not saying the teachers. I'm saying the system. So, but going
Yes,
back, what
exactly.
I always have noticed about you, especially in your education style, you have this unbelievable ability to take something creative and not talk about it from feeling. You don't know to say, well, it's got
Right.
to feel like this or do like that, or I'm kind of doing this. You have this unremarkable um, ability. is it remarkable or unremarkable? I don't want to make it sound wrong, but you have this, it's
Yeah.
good. You have a good ability to take the
Thank you.
creativity and then you can put it into words that are understandable. So you have that ability to take the creativity, make it logical, and give it that life so we can comprehend what you're telling us to do. And I think that's an absolutely
Absolutely.
incredible gift.
Thank you. Thank you. I think that comes from, to be honest with you, from watching so many different people, different education forms, and learning what stood out to me and what I
Yeah.
didn't like. And sometimes I would find watching certain educators, it would be more, like you were saying, more inspirational or like aspirational, even maybe is the word, but it wasn't something that really related to salon life. And so when I was able to realize that my job as an educator was simply to help people behind the chair do what they do easier, better, and more efficiently. Honestly, it took a huge load off my shoulders of having to feel like I had to come up with these groundbreaking techniques and like really crazy out of the box things. Because as much as I love doing that stuff, I realize that the bread and butter behind the chair is usually more commercial, consumer friendly work. So that's really what helped me set up teaching so simplified and clear is that if we don't overcomplicate things and we realize just looking at principles that we can create anything, then those are the best gifts that you can
Yeah,
share with
I
anybody.
agree 100% because sometimes that people get caught where they don't understand a foundational element of something. And if that never gets in
Yes.
there, they don't understand the hook, how it gets them from here's what I want to do to achieving it. And they're always battling now and copying rather than understanding. And I think that's part of what you have this incredible ability to do is to take something of that's a complex, like if you take a look at some of the foiling or some of the patterns that you put in here, to others could be astronomical. And I just say, well, look at I love it, I like it, but I'll never be able to do that. But you've got this ability to say, take it and say, here's step one, here's step two, here's step three, and that's all you have to do. And I think
Yeah.
that's the mark of an amazing educator. And I've always seen that in you. And it's just like I said, I think you might have learned a little bit from me, but I always learn a lot from you and all the shows that we've done together. So I want to jump back to okay, now you've jumped in, you got both feet in,
Yeah.
you've had your training, and now they send you out on your first show. First show, what was it like?
Well, I'm laughing because the first show was also an ABA show, and it was in your hometown of Saskatoon, actually. So, and then I just have to finish why I'm laughing because it really is sending me back to the flashback. The day before the hair show started, it was the livestock show and in that venue. So there was a certain smell in the air, if you will, and a lot of
Yeah,
flies
we like to
flying
call it
around. So,
the terroir.
well, it was definitely
Yes, and
terroir
there was a
in
little,
the
how you
air,
say,
that's for sure.
punjante.
Yes, and there was literally flies landing on my face while I was speaking. So that was the first experience I had on stage. So talk about public humiliation. It happened really early on.
So what was it like? When you walked on stage for the first time? Because that's what I think most people are getting. Okay, look, I'm in the salon, I'm doing good hair, but if I had to do it, what would that feeling be like when I walked on stage the very first time?
Yeah, the best way I could probably describe it is it's like when you're on the roller coaster and you're about to go over the first
Yeah,
like dip. So when you're standing back there waiting to go up the stairs, one, you're like, I hope I don't fall down the stairs. And we've definitely both done that before. And two, like, what's this moment going to feel like? So you're like on your way up, they call your name, you walk out, and it's yeah, it kind of feels like you're going down the roller coaster. And to this day, I still
good.
get that feeling within that first little bit of walking out. And, I think we've mentioned this before, like that feeling is kind of what shows that
Yeah,
you're doing it for the right reason. You're still wanting to connect with these people and hope that they're going
yeah,
to get a lot of great info from you. So yeah, it's a whirlwind of emotions. And still to this day, people ask, do you get nervous? And
yeah.
100% I do because I'm a perfectionist in the way that I want to make sure that I give the best possible presentation and education in everything that I
Yeah,
do.
and I'm with you on that one because I remember I'm saying this jokingly, but it was almost like you'd have a little pee that would come out just before you stepped on stage because you were so nervous. But I remember one person, and like we do a lot of training and teaching and whatnot, but I always feel that we got all of this stuff from somebody else. We were always taking what our teachers, mentors, and coaches have always given us and applying that and bringing that forward. But I can remember what helped me the most now is that when somebody said to me, I was ready to go on stage, and I was, as usually, I used to be back on stage, walking back and forth and trying to burn off all this energy that I have. It was probably fear I was trying to burn off. But I remember I'd walk on stage. And I remember after the show, somebody said, "Why are you doing that?" I said, "Well, I'm so, my adrenaline is so high. I had to try to wear it off." And he said, "Well, look, here's what's happening. You're going out there and you're sounding like you're nervous. You're sounding like you've just had, I don't know, I don't do drugs, so I don't know which drug makes you high. But so if I had a whole bunch of that," and he said to me, "Listen, do you care about those audience members?" And I said, "Yeah, just say, well, I care about you." And he says, "Do you know your stuff?" I went, "Yeah." He says, "Well, say, I know that I know." And I said, "Oh, okay." And he said, "Now," he'd just say, "Now, say, I know that I know and I care about you." I said, I know that I know and I care about you." And he said, "No, listen, if you know that you know your stuff, if you care about them, you stop thinking about yourself." And that was one of the best
Yeah.
things. And it really helped to calm my nerves. So for people that are out there, right, whether it's you're stepping in front of a one person or 10,000 people, if you just care about the people that are out there and don't worry about making mistakes, you'll be fine. And I've seen you do that.
It's true. No, and like, well, I love that you said about the public humiliation because I think one of the biggest things to overcome is once you realize that it's okay to humiliate yourself publicly, especially if that's in your character, like it is
Yeah.
for us, then it takes that whole pressure off the hook. And you're like, great, I'm just public speaking, sharing
Yeah.
something I'm passionate about and good at with other people that want to hear about it. But, the humiliation, when you said that, does stand out to me because that is a hurdle that some people are so
Yeah.
afraid of crossing, but if you realize that we're all human, we all make mistakes, and if you laugh it off and handle it the right way,
Yeah.
what is it? It's just something funny for people to look back and either remember and laugh about or
Yeah.
move
And
on.
actually, they're actually endeared to you even more when they see that you're a human
Fully.
being and not somebody that doesn't make mistakes. This episode is sponsored by the Salon Associate Accelerator from trainersplaybook.com. Are you struggling with the time and cost of associate training? Do you feel like your salon is running you? We'll get your associates on the floor, all with 90% less time from you, so you can get back to building your business. Get them world-class design, finishing, color, and client care skills they'll use every day for the rest of their career, while you focus on realizing your vision. Go to trainersplaybook.com and get the Salon Associate Accelerator. And now, back to the show. Um, I want to go back
Right.
to, because we're talking about shows here, and I know that you traveled the whole circuit. And I remember when I started, I traveled, I think 5 years with one company. I started off with L'Oreal, and then I went to Redken, and I did 5 years, and then 5 years, same show circuit, same gigs all the way across. And I think, while they were all great, I I loved going to Newfoundland, and going to the O'Regans. Do you remember? Yeah, remember the
Yes.
O'Regan show?
Oh,
They were
yes.
always the best, and you always, what was it? 10 Darling Street was their home address. They always had you over to the house. I always remember 10 Darling Street because I think that's the same as the British Prime Minister lives in. And but
Yes,
they were
yes,
so amazing. So I have to ask you a question. I know you've been there, but have you ever been screeched
yes.
in?
I knew that you were going there. Yes, I of course was screeched in. I think that's like an obligation of coming to Newfoundland. And I also heard, I think it's okay to say this, but I also heard a new term there that because there's kind of a different dialect. Words are used a little differently, and yeah, I've learned some new terms
What's the
there.
term?
So
I want to
let's
see
put it
if I
that way.
remember.
So I was talking about, I forget what I was teaching, but it was something about detangling. And someone in the audience put up their hand. And so I answered her question. And she said, what do you do when the hair gets right clitty? And I paused and I said, excuse me? And everyone that's from there started laughing. They're like, clitty means
Oh.
tangle. And I was like, oh, wow, I could have used that in the dictionary before I got here, before I kissed the fish. That's the screeching, by the way, if
Yeah,
that
just
was
and so
listening
everybody,
to
because if you don't
behind the
know
scenes.
what screeching is that when you're screeched in, they have it's a rum. Screech is a rum that they used to make during wartime, and it's um, uh, nasty. I guess that's the only thing that I can think of.
I was like, are you going to
No,
say it's
no, it's
good?
nasty. And but you'll get a Mickey in Canada, and a Mickey is just a small bottle, and they'll pour you a shot, and you have to get screeched in. Means, and I'm gonna. Is it okay? Maybe if I'm gonna try it. I'm gonna try the saying here. And so what
Okay.
you have to. I can't remember the exact order, but you have to say this saying, and then you have to I think
Yes.
you have to kiss the cod, and the cod is usually a dead cod that they have in the freezer,
Yeah.
and they bring out for this ceremony. And so here it goes. I'm going to try it. I haven't done it in probably 10 years, so I'm probably going to mess it up. um and I think I'm going to mess it up. I think I've forgotten it. Uh, God, no, it's gone. It was, I know
It's
it
fine.
was OSIM meal jib. Oh no, have you ever been screeched in? To which you answer, OSIM meal cock. No, yes, OSIM meal cock, and long may your long jib draw. And I think that's what you have to answer.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
and then you have to kiss the cod and then shoot the rum. And you have to remember the saying, because if you can't get the saying right, you have to do it again. So yeah, interesting. But God bless the O'Regans, and that show was always amazing. Um, I remember, and I'm going to ask you if you remember an interesting show story, prank, or whatever. But I remember Shelley Wagner was, I think she was, I can't remember what her title was at that time, but I remember, and this one was in Halifax. And remember, in Halifax, you used to stay down below, and then you had to go up the kind of the hill, and there was a back
Yeah.
way into the convention center. And I remember having the cart, and we had everything, all the mannequins, all the stuff piled up, and we had to do our own ironing and the own thing. So we had an ironing board on the top. And so we thought it would be really funny if we got Shelley to lay on top of the ironing board, on top of everything, on this hotel cart.
On the hill.
And we would, I pushed her. God knows I was a little bit stronger than I am now, but and not that she weighed a lot. There
That's
was a
a
lot
steep
on there. And I
hill.
remember pushing her up the ramp. We had to go up this long, long ramp, and then we went into the convention center. And I remember I hit a bump, and then it was like slow motion, but all the boxes came down almost like a ski slope. And so it was one box, like 10 boxes, 5 boxes, 4 boxes, 3 boxes, with this ironing board on top, with Shelley on top of it, sort of surfing this thing, laying down, going down on the thing. And it was maniacal. But I remember all these great
That,
stories from doing shows. Have you got any? Is there any like that, pranks, things that you used to do,
yeah.
or still?
Yeah, there was there still yeah, I got to get back into pranking people, but the energy was a little off for a few years now. So maybe we're back into being happy and
Yeah.
pranks again now. But a good one that we used to do was for the colorists, someone's preparing their bowls to put up on stage to be ready for the demonstration. And we would normally you'd have your brush resting
Yep.
into the bowl. And there's like a little lip specifically on the Redken bowls to hold the brush. We would glue the color brush to the lip and then fill the bowl with the product. So when they would go to talk, instead of just the brush coming out,
The
it
whole
would be
thing.
like the whole bowl is moving and they're very confused about what's going on and cause a little bit of chaos. So that's one that, yeah, comes to mind.
Oh Lord. I mean, see, see, for anybody wanting to get in education, you see that there's the camaraderie in the community that goes along. And you know what I love that's nowadays is it used to be just amongst your, we called it a tribe then, but you called it, you just your community. If you had your Redken community, you did. But what I love that's happening now is so many of the educators from all of the companies are getting together and having a community. And it's more hairdressers supporting hairdressers. I think Sam V, our good friend, coined that expression. And I think that's what's great about there now is that some of the competition has, I think it's always competitive, but the competition
Right.
and the holding everybody apart is gone. And I think it's everybody is now much more, uh, I'd say, friendly out there. What's your vibe and feeling on that?
100%. I think it's so nice that I think, and think about it like this. It's like a sports team. We all have our team that we're
Yeah,
rooting for, our brand, but at the end of the day, we're all playing the
yeah,
game together. And so I think being able to remove that ego of the competition and realizing that at the end of the day, they're going to have people cheering
yeah,
all of us on no matter what. And we're all doing the same thing. So let's break down that wall because half the time we're on the same circuit
exactly.
together anyway. Like you see the same people. And I remember back in the day, it would be like you'd see these big artists, and I'd sit there and they'd act like they didn't know you,
Yeah,
sort of thing, or like, not really acknowledge. And now it's
yeah,
so nice to go to these traveling circus events, if you will, and have a little
yeah,
family that's not even playing on the same team, but you're all doing the same thing. And I think what it's really done is help to open up the world of education and really help to get everybody up to a better
yeah,
speed. And so some people might look at that as well, I've lost my edge in a way because I used to be the better educator or the better brand education. But at the end of the day, I think it's just, again, we're all there for the
right.
same purpose to help
Yeah.
stylists
And
grow.
and I think whether you're educating in the salon or whether you're educating on the road, I think one of the purest moment is they always say when the student passes the teacher. It doesn't mean the teacher is worth any
Right.
less, but when you can
Yep.
be involved in somebody's training where that person actually passes you and you can go, yes, that just for no other reason than that
Exactly.
person now has risen up and they now can teach. Um, they now can have some of the glory too. I just that sounded all wrong when I said the glory because that's not what it's necessarily about. But being able to go
No,
ahead.
but No, I know what you're saying with that. It's like being able, and you've always been so great about that with me growing up through the years. You've always encouraged me to have a bit of the, I guess, spotlight, even is what we'll say, and or opportunity
Yeah,
is a
yeah,
better way to put it. And I think that's the sign of any great leader is realizing that we're all here as leaders to be able to help other people. And when you're able to help that junior or newer person be able to come up and play at your level, it feels great because you're like, wow, I
yeah,
did my job, right? I did my job well. And you can both celebrate it. That person gets that moment in the spotlight, which they've been trying to achieve, and you get to pat yourself on the back, being a proud papa bear, if you will, of like, I've got many
yeah.
children now that I've passed up
Yeah.
the ranks.
Yeah,
So
because I mean that's a part of legacy, isn't it? I mean, we're all
it
doing it,
is, yeah.
building it up, but at the end of the game, we're all going to pass on, but you hope that your legacy, and if even if it's not your name, something that you've done is going to be passed on, to other people. And I think that to me is the legacy of what you leave behind is always a great thing. I know you're going to have that, you'll have that amazing part in your history. I want to jump back to because there's a few people. We have a lot of educators nowadays. Some do their own thing. Some are with a
Mhm.
manufacturer, but you've kind of crossed that line in a great way where you've been involved with the manufacturer, but yet you're involved with the Ulta Pro team, where you have this
Mhm.
superstar lineup of different hairdressers, different educators from different companies, all getting together, amalgamating on one show, and being that you have your own little community there. But I've seen you as a workhorse. I want to talk a little bit about what's it like to be on that team, but also I've seen you do work for Ulta on one stage, organize your timing, and you're on Redken with another stage. And I've seen you like running from
Yeah.
model room to model room, getting things. What is that like? Explain what that's like from a mindset aspect, as well as the reward that you get out of it from doing that.
So, from a mindset aspect, obviously things need to be really buttoned up and prepared and clean on my hand or in my head leading up to it. So, I have to be very clear on what my expectations are with each brand, what my models are going to be. But, like anything, Chris, the team is one of the most important things. So, who I have supporting me, especially when I am, sometimes it's literally a 15-minute turnaround time to run to another stage and get to that model. I need teams on both sides that are setting me up to win and kind of like stepping up to the plate of being that
Yeah.
leader. So team is the most important thing to make that successful. But in the reward in it for me is really, like I said, being able to be exposed to two platforms, if you will, of opportunities to share with stylists and be able to get even more content out there. So I'm usually sharing one message on one stage and a completely different message for the other stage. So that way, for me, it's kind of like filling my creative cup. For example, in Redken, oftentimes I get, I don't want to say typecast because that sounds like a bad word, but I get pushed as being like the
Mhm.
colorist. And oftentimes, and I'm fine with that. I love color, but I love to do finishing too. And with being on the Ulta team, they really celebrate the diversity of being a
Yeah.
finisher. So it allows me to fill my cup in different ways that I wouldn't get if I just stayed in one situation,
Yeah.
I guess.
And I have to say that the proof in the pudding in that one, to use that section, that one twice, is I never knew that you were, even up until about, I'm saying, what, about 5, 6 years ago, I didn't know that, the quality of the work that you did in finishing. And I have to say that there's so few people out there that can master 2 or even 3 disciplines, but all they have to do is look at um, your finishing work in, and I'm just going to say, it's finishing work is not just NAHA, but in your photographic collections
Right.
and the work that you do with campaigns, because you're also involved in doing photo shoots and campaigns with manufacturers, etc. And quite frankly,
Yep.
100 years ago, I was thinking, well, you're just so focused and your lane was color. I was thinking that you had somebody else do your finishing, but damn, it was all you. And I even on the last shoot that we did together, I mean, I picked up stuff from you, and I'm doing it for like a week and a half. But I don't know where you got your tips from, but I'll tell you, you have an amazing eye. And here's the point: amazing eye to do it in real life, but there's another thing for your eye to do it in a photograph.
Photo.
I want you to talk about that a little bit.
Yeah.
What when you're doing a photograph for a collection and you're under the eye of the camera, what do you do different? What do you have to look at, and what are things you think about?
So first off, I have to say where that really came from was when I joined with the Ulta Pro team and being around so many other people that were already established as like the
Mhm.
finisher sort of thing. So that was where I got a lot of those great tips. But the reality is that when you're working on the camera, and the stylists in the salon know this too, when you're taking photos of your work to post on Instagram, what the camera sees and what your eye sees are completely
Mhm.
different. So it's about understanding lighting. It's about understanding balance and proportion in the hair shapes. Sometimes what we see in person is looking like big or voluminous. When you shoot it on the film, it's actually
Yeah.
very small. And so, it's really important to be able to check what it's going to shoot like. Oftentimes when we do shoots, we have a test shoot also to see. So there's a lot more work that goes into it than people think about. Sometimes it's not just about doing the pretty hair that looks good in real life. It's understanding the lighting, the situation you're going to be in, what's the set look like, what's the vibe and the energy of the model is going to be. Are they going to be moving around? There's
Yeah.
just a lot of different things to take into
Yeah,
consideration.
and I want to just jump back in there too, because as I remember, and what I was so impressed with when I watched you shift from stage to stage and having people backstage and support you, is you always stepped on stage and you always recognized that person. Because I think the more that
100%.
you can, when you say, "Look, I've had a lot of help in that, especially on stage," that gives that bump up to that other person, and they see you as a human being. And that, I think there's so many people that we can use and get advice from nowadays. Even if you're in the salon doing things on your own and you've got things, get somebody that can be an assistant to you, even if it's a visual personal assistant. Get somebody to help you along with your stuff so that you have more time with family and friends, etc. And right now, my family is probably looking at me going, "What the hell are you talking about?" So, um, because I don't, but that's one thing I've learned along the way. I want to jump back now and say, like, that ability, the things that you got, or the tips. Who were the people that really helped you along in adjusting your eye for finishing?
So really, some key players in that was, Nick Stenson, of course, solid finisher, won tons of awards. He has a really great eye when it comes to photo work and how to exaggerate and amplify things that, like I said, in real life, they might look a little off, but then when you see it in front of the camera, the shape
Yeah,
and the silhouette fits because the way the camera plays tricks with you. Another huge one was Ammon Carver, of course, a
beautiful. Yeah,
phenomenal finisher. He really took me by the hand and helped me. And honestly, what really came from it, sometimes you don't realize this, especially when you're, up and coming or maybe haven't had your big break in that world yet. You don't realize the importance of someone like that being a mentor and saying, "I believe
yeah,
in you." And you've
yeah,
got this and do it. And he was a really big player for that for me. That when I had just met him when I moved to New York, and he said, "Yeah, I believe in you. You got this," and just kept pushing me and pushing me and pushing me. And that gave me the confidence that I needed to be able to then go off and start doing these big campaigns on my own, and not having the fear that I'm
yeah,
not good enough, which I think is a common thing that we doubt
yeah.
in ourselves, like, I'm not
Yeah,
good enough
I
for
think that
this.
most people out there, other than, you know, I won't label it, but I think most people have that little some spouts of imposter syndrome and a little bit of insecurity that comes in there.
Yeah,
But but first of all, I would be remiss if I didn't say congratulations, because one more time
thank you.
you're nominated for NAHA's Color Award, and your work is amazing as always. And so, first of all, I want to say congrats.
Thank you.
Secondly, I think that this is even a greater compliment is that I'm noticing other people entering NAHA, and there's a couple that are in other categories who literally I went, that's Sean's work too. And I look at the name and it's not Sean's name. So people, you're either
Yeah.
mentoring people or these people are really excited about your work. And so how do you feel about that?
Well, here's the funny thing, actually. First off, again, thank you for the congratulations. I'm really excited about this shoot, and I feel like it's been one of the best ones
I
that I've
agree.
done to
I
date.
agree.
They just keep growing, getting better. But what was really interesting about this is that when we did that shoot, Ulta Beauty was fortunate to sponsor us on that, and we did a week-long shoot where they believed instead of us coming together as the pro team, which we've done for so often, that they were going to break up that budget and give each of us our own teams to mentor under us. So I had two stylists that I was mentoring under me. And one of them, her name is Janelle, she's actually nominated in the
Yeah.
category with me. So that my mentee that shot the same day that I did, I helped coach her, give her all of the advice and all of that. I'm so proud of her that she's nominated in the
Yeah.
same category as me. And some people might be like, well, don't you feel like competitive about that? But no, again, it goes back to what I was saying about being a leader. I feel so great that this younger stylist that hasn't had as much exposure or opportunity as that I have was able to come up and play in the league
Yeah.
with people like us. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? So that the one that you're thinking of, why it might look like mine is because it was no, I didn't do it. She
Yeah.
definitely still did herself, but with
Yeah, and
mentorship.
see, I think that's the key part of mentoring. Mentoring doesn't mean doing. Mentoring means is you
Right.
give them the tools so that they can do it themselves. And I think that's admirable. And I know on that vein, I know I was talking to Christopher Benson the other day, and I think that he does a lot of shoots for other people. Like I know Braden
Yes.
as we both
Braden.
know,
Yeah.
friends of ours. He is up for some awards as well. And I asked Christopher, so what's it like when you're doing the photography, and you're helping them along, and now they're in the same category. How do you feel about that? And he said the same thing you did. He says, "Look, that's a win for
Yeah.
me. Whatever, if they win, I win too."
Exactly.
You know? Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. So
Exactly.
it's I commend that, and that's one thing I'm loving about our industry right now is how we're willing to help each other. Um,
Well, I want to share with you one more point on this because I think you'll find it interesting. That same shoot, so she did all of her preparation because
yeah.
prep is one of the most important parts of a shoot. and got to New York. She's from Utah. Got to New York, and the day of the shoot, she tested positive for COVID. So her first kick at the can, she tested positive for COVID. But because she prepared, she had everything done and ready to go for the shoot. So myself and Danielle Kiesling, who is also on the team, were able to make her shoot come to life with her on FaceTime
Wow.
and be able to still, and then she's still
Yeah.
placed with it. So we're just so proud of that. And I think it's just such a cool story to really show you how key the setup is when you're walking into anything like this, and just in case anything
Yeah.
could happen.
And Daniel Kiesling, there's another name that if people don't know, and I can't imagine why you wouldn't, but you should because she is, um, he is just, she's
Phenomenal
phenomenal.
finisher.
Um, now, I just want to take a little switch back. Is
Mhm.
your first exchange class? And for anybody who doesn't know, like it doesn't know it, Redken Exchange in New York City. You're in New York City. We have an amazing facility there that is just focused everything on education. And it's one thing everybody wants to be there, but there's obviously not enough room for everybody to do a program there. What was that like for you?
Right. So my first time going to the New York Exchange was really, really intense because prior to that, I had been with you several years at the Toronto Exchange, but let's be real, it didn't have the
Right.
same vibe and energy that the
Yeah.
New York one does. So, my first time going there and teaching a class there, I was actually working with Lori Zabel and Lauren Hagen, two of our friends to
Yeah.
this day. And so I remember, one, I'll just say, what a great set of leaders for me to come in with to be my mentors in that situation, because they took all of the stress and pressure off of me and really helped guide my hand through it. But because without that, we know, like, walking into something like that, it's like a well run machine, and there is not really a lot of wiggle room for error. And, it's like a full blown production at the Redken Exchange. So it just was so important to have someone to be able to walk me through all of that so that I felt better and more confident about my first time there. But the experience walking away from it, it was really great in the end. We had a nice, solid, packed class, and hey, I got asked back again ever since
Well,
then.
and
So I guess we did
you're
something
probably one
right.
of the most regulars that are there now. I want to go to some rapid fire things that we have in just a second. But the one
Yeah.
thing that I want you to just touch on, because I've been in classes when you've done it, and I see how you do it. So I want to talk to just a bit about wig work and
Yes.
when you're doing a shoot, when you can use a wig, when you can't, and what's the differences, and what advice would you give people who want to use a wig? And because we all know that you can't get a model, and this is still one of the bugbears that I have. They want right now you almost have to use professional models, almost have to,
Yeah.
in order to get the emotion across. But you're not allowed to cut or color their hair on some. Some yes, some no. What's your thoughts on that? And what would you advise people? What advice would you give people if they want to use a wig?
So, yeah, I mean, that's the reality. Sometimes you have to use a wig to get the result you want and to tell the
Yeah,
story, I think, is the most important part about that, because it's not about it just being the professional model. It's about who can carry the story or the look, even. So, with working with wigs, the biggest thing that I can say is that, you get what you pay for, is the easiest way to put it. So, unfortunately, the more expensive it is, the more realistic it's going to be. But you and I know that it's for a photo shoot, especially, it's not all about it being, you don't have to have the most
yeah,
expensive wig. In fact, we love to make the wigs as well. So the biggest thing that I'll say, though, is wigs and extensions is that they don't respond to hair
yeah,
color the same way that a normal head of hair would, and not even the same way that a mannequin head would, because a lot of the times the hair has been treated with so many different processes and bleaching to get it to whatever color it happens to be when you receive it. So my biggest learnings with that is understanding that sometimes the first layer of color that you put on when you wash it off, it might not be really hot. It might be looking a little
yeah,
sad. So learning how that sometimes actually takes like 3 to 4 layers of the color to be able to get the
yeah,
effect that you want to see. So I think my first time trying that, I was like, oh, I ruined the wig and like kind of discarded it. But then I understood better that it's really like you're filling the hair back in, especially if you're starting with like the
yeah,
classic 613 blonde color, that
yeah,
yellow blonde. You're really having to fill it back in and add layers to it. to get that depth or saturation that you want. And then the other thing that I would share for it is it's really important, especially when you're working with a lace wig, to be very cautious of getting color
Nice.
on the lace. So, because that will stain it and ruin the whole illusion. And usually lace wigs are more
Yeah.
expensive. So that will ruin the illusion of the lace. And the good news is for anyone that's watching that happens to work with Redken hair color, I can happily say that Shades EQ gloss will not stain the lace on the wigs. So that is a one safety net with Shades EQ and a wig work is that it's going to wash right off that plastic mesh that's on there and not cause you any grief with staining. However, when you move into certain brands of permanents or vivids,
Yeah.
that's when it's going to stain. So you really have to be
Yeah,
aware of that.
especially, if you're leaving any of the lace around the face or if you have some of the parting showing.
Exactly. The
Yeah,
part line, yes,
yeah.
for sure.
So it comes time for our rapid fire. Just first thing that comes off the top of your head. Um,
Okay.
what turns you on in the creative process?
Really seeing a vision come to life in the end. I love being involved in all aspects of it. And then when I finally get to see it come together, like the NAHA shoot, for example,
Yeah.
that's what I love about the creative
What
process.
stifles the creative process for you? Mm,
Overthinking, honestly, thinking too deep
yeah,
on it. Someone said recently the more you think on it, the less authentic it
exactly.
becomes.
An event or a show that you loved. I mean, you've done many, but what's that comes to your brain? What's the one that you just went, "Oh my God, I could quit after that one."
The first one that came to my mind when you said that was one of the fusion events in Canada. You've
Yeah,
been there, you know those are always a nice big show. And I think, well, I looked at it kind of like a homecoming, like
yeah,
I made it sort of thing. Like finally getting on that stage was like,
yeah.
okay, I did it.
Things in life that you dislike the most. Life in general.
Life in general, slow people. I think I don't know if that became from a New York thing, but I have anxiety about people being
Yeah,
too
and
slow.
the thing that you love most about life.
What I love most about life is just the opportunities that you can really steer it the way that you want to take it.
Most difficult time in your life.
Most difficult time was probably that transition from Halifax to Toronto and figuring out, will I actually make this
Wow.
happen?
Proudest moment of your life.
My proudest moment, well, that shouldn't have been that hard to think of, but you got to go
Yeah,
through the Rolodex. I would say it's honestly been being in New York City. I think this has been like the
yeah,
peak for me.
yeah. It is certainly a country unto of itself. Things
Yes.
that you dislike about our industry.
I dislike the hate that people put on like social
Yeah,
media, for example. I think if you don't have anything nice to say,
yeah.
just keep moving.
And tell us what you love about our industry the most.
But what I love is that aside from those haters out there, there's even more supporters that are willing to help anybody and help
Yeah,
lift them up.
and I agree with you on that one. A living person that you admire the most.
A living person that I admire the most. Wow, that is a hard one. I mean, I'm sitting with one right now. Honestly, I do owe a lot to you, to
Yeah,
Sam. All of the
yeah.
OGs.
Sammy's amazing people. Um, a person you wish you could meet, living or dead.
A person I wish I could meet. Well, I'm like a fangirl of
Ah,
Mariah Carey, and that's my goal celebrity of whose hair I really want to do one day. I'm still
you know,
working on that one.
she lived 2 doors down from me in New York. Yeah, when
Oh,
we
no
were on
way.
Broadway, she
Sweet.
had the penthouse suite. We
Oh,
didn't have the
yes,
penthouse.
yes.
Um, something that people don't know about you.
My favorite, well, a fun fact of people don't know is that I've never driven a car in my life.
What?
I have no clue how to drive.
You and
Yeah, I know
Jeremy,
it's weird, but I was really good at video games. I feel like I got through there. I could figure it out if there was an
yeah,
emergency.
you and Jeremy Cote would get along fine. He's never driven a car either that I know of.
It's a fashion gay thing. We don't drive, we
Yeah,
just shop.
exactly. Let's see. A month off. Where would you go? Where would you call?
A month off,
What would you do?
I would be I would be probably in Europe. I'm more of like a city type of person. I love to go and explore cities and see all the people and sights and
Oh,
inspiration.
what country in Europe is your fave?
Oh, that's a hard thing. There's still a few that I have to hit, but I would say I do love going to
Oh,
Paris a lot.
yeah. See, and to my mind, not I love Italy. That's one of my faves in the world.
I haven't been yet.
Oh,
That's on the list.
it's I
Yeah,
just absolutely adore Italy. And my it's the same as Greece. I always say go to Rome or go to Athens, spend a few days there, but then get out in the country. That's where the amazing stuff is.
right.
Um,
I should say Greece too. I think there's something magical about Greece because it's so
yeah,
unique
yeah,
from everywhere else in Europe because of
exactly.
how old everything is.
Your greatest fear?
Greatest fear. I think heights. I'm really
Me
afraid of
too. I'm
heights.
terrified of heights.
Yeah.
Favorite curse word?
Favorite curse word. I like to use
Okay,
fuck. It's
the
a classic.
classic, because it can be an adverb, it can be a noun, it can be an
It-
adjective, whatever you want it to be.
exactly.
Yeah. And just
Exactly.
sometimes for emphasis.
Just yeah, it's a
Yes,
punctuation mark.
exactly. Favorite comfort food?
Favorite comfort food is probably like I was about to say it's not good for you, but that's
Yes.
comfort food, like mac and cheese,
Mm.
maybe. Yeah, mac and cheese.
Mhm.
We'll go with that.
If you could change one thing about yourself, what would it be?
Um, ooh, that's a good question too. Probably to be taller. I don't know. I'm already tall, but I do wish that I was
Yeah,
taller.
I always say I'm just I'm not. It's not that I'm not tall enough. It's just that for my body mass index, I should be 7'2". Um, your most your most treasured possession.
My dog
Oh,
Pablo. I love that little
what kind of
guy.
dog? We got to
Yeah,
know.
he's a French
Oh,
bulldog.
I did know that. I did know that. Something in the industry that you haven't done, but you want to. We're putting the vibe out there now.
Yeah, that I haven't done that I want to. I think I've never worked on like like a music video or like video
Oh,
production and like a movie type thing. So like a video movie, something like that could
yeah.
be fun to do. I've not done that world yet.
Um, if you had now, I won't, I'm going to preface this. I won't take nothing for an answer on this. Okay,
Okay.
because some
Uh-oh.
people will always say, "Well, you'll get it when I." If you had one do-over in your life, what would it be?
Oh, that's definitely not a nothing. Um, Something that's like career related, I would say, is there's some risks that I didn't take because I was afraid of them in terms of making moves career wise, and I there's some of them that I would have done
Got
over,
it.
taken the risk and not held
Yeah,
myself back.
and I always wondering whether people are going to go really deep and give me exact details, or whether they're going to do that. I remember doing one with I think it was with Trevor Sorby, and I said, "What was it?" And he said, "Mary, I wouldn't have married my first wife," and I went, "Oh, Jesus." Maybe that was a little TMI.
Oops.
Oops. Okay, tomorrow you couldn't do hair or anything hair related. What would you do?
I would probably, yeah, I mean, these are thoughts that I've actually had recently. I'm like, what would I do if I couldn't do hair? I would probably do something like involving a store. I'm
Oh,
always into like the concept of like maybe a retail shop or some sort of like vintage type store. We know those work really
yeah.
well these days. So something
Awesome.
like that.
And I want to do this before I ask you this last question, because people are going to want to get a hold of you. If they, I know that you think that you do. Everybody thinks you just do nothing but main stage, but you do in salon classes at all. If
Yeah.
people want to reach you to book you for a class, how do they do that?
Yeah, you can hit me up on Instagram. It's at Sean Godard,
1D.
1D,
Yeah,
Godard. And also, if you happen to be a Redken account or a L'Oreal account in general, you can book a class with me with your level loyalty points, and you can do that all online on the
beautiful.
website.
Okay, last question. If you had one wish
Mhm.
for our industry, what would that be?
To realize that everybody has value within the industry and we're all
Yeah,
equals.
that's amazing. Sean, I call you friend as well as a teacher mentor as well, but um, we've been friends for years now, and I know how busy you are, but I also how I know the effect you've had on the industry. So I just want to say for everything you contributed, for giving up your time and being here. I just want to say thank you. It was a pleasure having you on here.
Thank you so much. The pleasure was totally mine.